Alright, today we are going to factor. And our target is I can factor a trinomial with a leading coefficient of 1. This is your easiest type of factoring when you're factoring a trinomial. Now if you remember from our previous unit, a trinomial is a polynomial with 3 terms. So when we go to factor a trinomial with a leading coefficient of 1, this is our process. So our trinomial that we're given is x squared plus 5x minus 6. When I talk about the leading coefficient, I talk about the coefficient that is with the x squared term. That is called our leading coefficient. And when we don't have a number with the x squared term, our leading coefficient is 1. So to factor this means we want to create two binomials that will multiply together that will give us this trinomial. Remember back in our polynomials unit, when we multiplied two binomials, we came up with a 4-term expression and the two middle terms collected to make a trinomial. So now we're going to do the opposite of that. We're going to come up with the two terms that you multiply to create this trinomial. So your first step is to find the magic numbers that satisfy both of these sentences. Two numbers that will multiply to give me a negative 6, which is the constant of our trinomial, the last term in our trinomial. That's where the negative 6 came from. And those same two numbers have to add together to give me a 5, the coefficient of the x term. So you will always get these two numbers from your trinomial. The one that multiplies will be the constant. The one that adds will be the coefficient of x. So to find these two numbers, I'm going to look at all the ways I can make negative 6. I can take 1 times 6, negative 6. I can take negative 1 times 6. I can take 2 times negative 3. Or I can take negative 2 times positive 3. All of those will give me a negative 6. So of these 4 combinations, we need the one that also satisfies, if I add them, they equal 5. So if I take 1 plus a negative 6, that'll give me negative 5. So that one's not going to work. If I take negative 1 plus 6, that gives me a positive 5. That's my one that works. So my magic numbers are negative 1 and positive 6, because negative 1 times 6 will give me negative 6, and negative 1 plus 6 will give me a positive 5. Once you find these magic numbers, they become part of your factor. When the leading coefficient is 1, you always have x plus or minus a number times x plus or minus a number. And the numbers that you plug in here are your magic numbers you found in the first step. So our factors will be x minus 1 times x plus 6. It does not matter what order you put these in. You could have also done x plus 6 times x minus 1. Alright, so that's the procedure. Let's try some more examples. I have 4 examples on this slide. First one, p squared minus 10p plus 21. So I'm going to set up my two math sentences. I'm going to need a number, two numbers that multiply together to give me a positive 21 from my constant, and that are going to add together to give me a negative 10. So I start listing all the ways I can make 21. I got 1 and 21, negative 1 and negative 21. 2 won't divide it, but I have 3 times 7 and negative 3 times negative 7. So those are all the ways that I can make 21. Now I look for the pair that also adds together to be 10. And that would be, adds together to be negative 10. And that would be negative 3 times negative 7. So I check. Negative 3 times negative 7 gives me a positive 21. And negative 3 plus a negative 7 gives me a negative 10. So my factors become x minus 3 times x minus 7. Because when I multiply those, or I FOIL them, I will end up with this trinomial. Alright, let's look at number 2. Oh, we're going to skip number 2 because it's actually the same process as number 1. It's just my variables changed. So cross out number 2. You get to skip one example this evening. Let's move to number 3. We have x squared minus 14x plus 40. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to give me my constant of 40, and then the same two numbers to add together to give me negative 14. So I list all the ways that I can make 40. I got 1 times 40, negative 1 times 40, 2 times 20, negative 2 times 20, 3 won't divide it, 4 times 10, negative 4 times 10, and 5 times 8, and negative 5 times 8. So those are all the ways that I can make 40. Now I'm looking for the two numbers that will also add to be negative 14. Sorry, these both need to be negative. This should be negative 1 and negative 40, negative 2 and negative 20, negative 4, negative 10, negative 5, and negative 8, because I need a positive 40. All right, so when I look through, I see that negative 4 plus negative 10 will also give me a negative 14. So negative 4 times a negative 10 gives me a positive 40, and negative 4 plus a negative 10 gives me a negative 14. So my factors become x minus 4 times x minus 10. Remember, it doesn't matter what order. I could also have x minus 10 times x minus 4. Either answer is acceptable. All right, number 4, the process is the same. I'm still looking for two numbers that multiply to give me that constant, which in this problem is negative 3, and add together to give me my coefficient of my middle term, which is 2. So for this one, I list all the ways I can make negative 3. I got 1 and negative 3, or negative 1 and 3, and that's it, because 3 is a prime number. So which one of these adds together to give me a positive 2? It'll be negative 1 and positive 3. So negative 1 times positive 3 gives me a negative 3, and negative 1 plus 3 gives me a positive 2. So my factors become n minus 1 times n plus 3. I see up here that I changed the p's to x's. Go ahead and write these as p's. I apologize. I just always usually use x's. All right, I have 3 more examples. When I put these 3 examples down, you're going to say, wait a second. These coefficients, leading coefficients, are not 1, but we're going to have to use that factoring that we learned first, factoring out that common factor. So when your leading coefficient isn't 1, always look to see if there's a common number that divides all of the numbers in the problem. So in number 6's case, I have 4 and 8 and 320. Those are all divisible by 4. So I'm going to pull the 4 out in front. And then I'm left with n squared plus 8 divided by 4 is 2n minus 320 divided by 4 will give me 80. So now I disregard this problem and I look to factor this trinomial. So I look for magic numbers, two numbers that multiply to give me negative 80 and that add together to give me a positive 2. Negative 80 coming from here, 2 coming from here. So when I think of all the ways that I can make negative 80, I come across negative 8 and 10. Negative 8 times 10 is negative 80, and negative 8 plus 10 is a positive 2. So my answer becomes I have to bring this 4 down that I pulled out. 4 times n minus 8 times n plus 10 as my final answer. All right, so we're putting the two things together. Factor out the common factor and then factor the trinomial. So number 7, we got 6, 42, and 48. 6 divides all 3 of those, so I'm going to pull the 6 out in front. And I'm left with x squared. 42 divided by 6 is 7, so a negative 7x. And 48 divided by 6 is an 8, so minus 8. Now remember, now I'm going to disregard that trinomial and I'm going to use these numbers to factor. So I'm going to look for the two magic numbers that multiply to give me negative 8 and add to give me negative 7. So when I look at all the ways that I make negative 8, if I use negative 8 and positive 1, that'll give me negative 8, and negative 8 plus 1 will give me negative 7. So I bring my 6 down that I factored out, and I create my two binomials. X minus 8 times x plus 1. Alright, and my last problem for this video, 2n squared minus 14n plus 20. You can see that the numbers have a 2 in common. So I'm going to pull the 2 out in front. So I'm left with n squared minus 14, sorry, let's try that again. I'm going to pull the 2 out in front, and I'm left with n squared minus 7n plus 10. I divide everything by 2. So now I'm looking for two numbers that will multiply to give me 10 and add to give me negative 7. So when I think of all the ways to make 10, I come across negative 5 and negative 2. Negative 5 times negative 2 is 10, and negative 5 plus negative 2 is negative 7. So I have to bring that 2 down. My final answer is 2 times n minus 5 times n minus 7. Alright, so the next day that we have class, we'll do some more guided practice problems, and then you'll practice some on your own.